Good afternoon. Today is February 26th. This is the meeting of State Board of Equalization. We are noticed for 1 p.m., but actually it's 1:30 p.m. So Chair does detect a quorum. I will remind the members we are video streaming live for the thousands of Tennesseans who are back in their offices and at home, and all those school children who are watching today. So if you would pick up your microphones whenever you are speaking, so the archives can pick it up, and then we can use the video streaming appropriately. Like I said, we have detected a quorum. The first item of business is going to be the review of minutes, but before we do that, if there's no objection, I'm going to move item number 6 up to third on our calendar, right behind review of minutes, and then I'm going to move item number 3, consideration of contested rules amendments, down to the last, well, not last, down to number 6, just before other business and adjournment. So with that said, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Properly moved. Properly seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll now take a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Minutes are approved. All right, now we're going to move to what it shows is item number 6 on the agenda, Roane County reappraisal noncompliance. Mr. Jones?
Mr. Chairman, would you be willing, you and the members of the board, be willing to take up item 4 and 5, which are also not expected to generate any witness requests or testimony? Would that be in order?
I'm amenable to that. Any objection to that? Let's move on to item number 4 then, approval of assessment designations. Mr. Jones?
Yes, Mr. Chairman and members, the Division of Property Assessments has reviewed the qualifications submitted for assessment designees in the Tennessee Master Assessor category. You've been provided, of course, this information in advance, including a memorandum from the division identifying these individuals. For the TMA designation, Terrence Stinnett with the Division of Property Assessments, along with Rhonda Bolton from the division, Jim Dooley, the assessor of Murray County, and these 3 are in the Tennessee Master Assessor category. The Tennessee Certified Assessor category, we have 7 there. Ms. Crystal DeShaw from Davidson County and Charlotte Miller, also from Davidson County. Elmer Moore from Shelby County, and from the Division of Property Assessments, Macy Brower, Randy Helton, Christina Gregg, and Timothy Morgan. So those individuals are before you for those designations, having met all requirements as determined by the Division of Property Assessments, and we would appreciate your action.
Mr. Treasurer?
I move approval.
Properly moved, properly seconded by the comptroller. Any discussion? Hearing no one, I take a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. They are approved. Let's move to item number 5, the county CAMA system changes. Mr. Jones?
In this category, Mr. Chairman, there is a memorandum. It bears a red number 5 at the top. It's actually 2, one connected to the other. The first deals with Hickman and Sullivan County, and the second, on the second page, deals with Rutherford County. Each of these counties is seeking to change their CAMA system, computer-assisted mass appraisal system, either from the state CAS or impact system or from an existing non-CAS system to a new system. And in the memoranda, it is identified the prior system and also the new system. In each case, the division has conducted its usual scrutiny of the proposed new system and recommends approval for these 3 counties, Hickman, Sullivan County, and Rutherford County. And we have, of course, plenty of staff here if you all have any questions about any 3 of these situations.
Any discussion? Chair would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Properly moved by Mr. Roberts, properly seconded by, was that you, Mr. Tarwater?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
Among others.
Properly seconded. We'll give it to you today. All right. Any discussion? Hearing none, when I take a vote, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Item is approved. Now let's go to what had shown us item number 6, Roane County reappraisal noncompliance. Mr. Jones?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is an item which has shown up on previous agenda. As you know, the Division of Property Assessments was directed to review the progress of the county in the course of completing its 2015 reappraisal. It first came to the board's attention in the form of a recommendation that the county be noticed of potential noncompliance, which was done previously, and now we are The matter is back before the board to receive the report of the division and the recommendation of the division regarding whether that noncompliance has been cured. I believe Mr. Wilson and some of his staff will be presenting information regarding their recommendation, and then it would be in order to allow any further testimony the board wishes.
Mr. Comptroller.
I believe Mr. Mumpower is making the division recommendation.
All right. Mr. Jason Mumpower, Chief of Staff for the Comptroller Treasury. You're recognized.
Thank you. Hand out a packet for each of you that I'm going to be working from, and we will have some slides on the board. The slides are also in the packet. You can work from either one as I go through our presentation. Barry, which one is it?
Bottom.
Here?
Yeah.
Here?
That's the one.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. It is an honor to be in front of you to present the facts on behalf of the Division Property Assessments about the facts and a recommendation on behalf of the Division of Property Assessments about what we feel like is in the best interest of the citizens of Roane County. You know, the mission, the heart, the core of the Division of Property Assessments is to ensure that taxpayers, all taxpayers across the state, but in this particular case, the taxpayers and citizens of Roane County, the Roane County government, receives a fair and accurate reappraisal. As you know, this board chose to put the Roane County reappraisal process into non-compliance earlier or late last year. And as we have worked with the Roane County Assessor's Office, as we have viewed the Roane County reappraisal efforts, we think sincerely that the process is fundamentally flawed, that we have no confidence in the reappraisal process as it has moved forward, and we believe that the only way the citizens and government of Roane County can be assured of a confident, accurate, and fair reappraisal is if the Division of Property Assessments enters Roane County at your direction and takes over the reappraisal process. That is going to be where I come back to, but in order to get us there, I want to start at the beginning, especially in that it's important. We have at least one new member of the board with us today. It's important that we consider the story that has gotten us to where we are today, that we consider the steps. So for the next 10 minutes or so, I want to take you through this and take you through why we believe we are where we are today. Following along with your packet there, going through a little bit of chronology. Back on August 16th of 2010, this board, the State Board of Equalization, approved a reappraisal plan for Roane County that was submitted at that point in time by then Assessor Teresa Kirkham. The plan, as submitted and approved, was scheduled to be completed in 2015. In August of 2012, David Morgan was elected as a new assessor for Roane County, and I note that because just because a county has a new assessor does not mean there is a new reappraisal plan. If a new assessor is elected in the midst of an approved reappraisal plan, the schedule approved by the State Board of Equalization remains in force, and the new assessor simply picks up in the midst of where the old assessor left it. In 2013, calendar year 2013, the Division of Property Assessments held 15 meetings with the Roane County Assessor's Office to discuss the reappraisal and other assessment-related issues. In calendar year 2014, the division held 9 additional meetings with the assessor's office or other Roane County officials to discuss the reappraisal. On October 7th, 2014, the Roane County assessor submitted a reappraisal quarterly progress report to the Division of Property Assessments, in which the assessor responded that personnel needs are not adequate to meet deadlines for the reevaluation year because he had lost 2 experienced appraisers in the last 4 months. The assessor responded no to 11 specific questions regarding progress on the reappraisal, noting that progress had not been made, and concluded that document with the answer no to the question, is the reappraisal program on schedule as required in the current plan of reappraisal? Based on that report, which again was October 7th, 2014, the Division of Property Assessments became very concerned as to the status of the reappraisal. As moving on November 19th of 2014, Roane County Mayor Ron Woody notified Executive Secretary of the State Board Kelsey Jones of concerns that Roane County was not able to complete the reappraisal in a timely manner. On November 26th of 2014, Secretary Jones responded to Mayor Woody, saying he would place Woody's concerns before this board. On December 8th, the Division of Property Assessments traveled to Roane County and briefed the County Commission on the status of the reappraisal. On December 15th, Division representatives met with Assessor Morgan. At that time, neither rates nor sales analyses were completed. The assessor stated that sales maintenance was 6 weeks behind, with no new construction having been picked up for several months. The assessor at that point in time could not provide a single property record card with a final value, nor could he provide any reports requested by the Division of Property Assessments. On December 29th, 2014, the Division of Property Assessments sent a memorandum to Executive Secretary Kelsey Jones regarding Roane County's noncompliance under Tennessee Code Annotated 67-5-1601F, setting forth and stating the Division of Property Assessments concerns with the assessor's ability to complete an acceptable reappraisal program in a timely manner. And we did that based on discussions between division staff and the assessor, concerns reported by the county based on the most recent progress report, and the assessor's inability to provide adequate documentation of the current status of the reappraisal program at that time. On December 30th, 2014, Secretary Jones sent notice of noncompliance with the reappraisal requirements to the assessor, specifying that corrective action had to be taken by February 13th, 2015. The required actions were: the assessor was to immediately provide reports or other information as requested to allow the Division of Property Assessments to verify progress in fulfilling the current approved reappraisal plan. Second, they were to immediately provide consent, authorization, and direction to their CAMA contractor or other contractors to cooperate with the Division of Property Assessments in evaluating the reappraisal progress. At the time, December 13th, they were to, in the next 10 to 14 days, to meet with Division of Property Assessment staff to establish a revised timetable for completing the 2015 appraisal. And based on the revised timetable, they were to carry out the required reappraisal activities subject to periodic Division of Property Assessment monitoring. And again, remember that these things were all due by February 13th. Since the non-compliance corrective action was initiated, the Division of Property Assessments has met with the assessor regarding concerns over the reappraisal completion dates twice in January and again on February 13th. Additionally, I myself met with the assessor on January 13th. Unfortunately, many of the reports that were requested to be here by February 13th did not arrive. Yesterday, which was, I believe, February 25th, we did receive a flurry of emails late in the day that had some documents attached, but because they arrived after the deadline at the close of the business day, we have not been able to thoroughly evaluate those reports received for accuracy or thoroughness. Based on that chronology, we are here today, or we were on February 13th, able to formulate the following facts and concerns. Based on data that we were provided as of February the 13th, we can see that in Roane County, the farms and large tract valuations are not complete. The data available as of February 13th was insufficient to allow completion of a greenbelt schedule. Secondly, as of the date given, lake property valuation was not complete. We found in the documents that we had been provided at that time that there were multiple listing errors, there were building calculation errors, there were depreciation calculation errors, and more. Turning to the slides and turning to the packets you have in front of you, one thing just we did is we, through the process of a phone call, an email, and a personal visit, division staff contacted Roane County, went to Roane County, and just picked up some building permits that are freely available, and noted with a very small sample of these building permits that new construction wasn't being consistently picked up. You can see right here from a random sample that the Division of Property Assessments was quickly, again from a small sample, able to find that at least 25 new houses had not been assessed and at least 22 mobile homes had not been assessed. An example of that is right there at 222 Majestic View Drive. Oops, I see I've hit something there. This house right here was not on the roll. And again, this is just a small sample. In addition to the residences and new construction homes we found were not be able to pick up, we found that the commercial and industrial valuation was not complete. As a matter of fact, when we looked, this property at 2001 Roane State Highway, this Weigel's Market, was not on the tax roll that we could find. Further, as we got deeper into the analysis, we found that residential property listings in the system do not depict current property attributes. One example, again of a small sample, is right here at 120 Arsenal Crossing. You can see that all structures, if you could see this card, hopefully you can on the the packet in front of you, all structures listed here in Group D are listed as improvement type 1, which would apply to a single family residence. They should actually be listed as improvement type 4 because this is a townhouse. Further, and I'll go ahead and move forward and show you this picture. This is a picture of a home we came across in Roane County. We couldn't get a better picture because it was hard to get in the driveway. You'll notice there's a power line hanging down across the driveway, so it wasn't safe to pull any further forward. But when you take and look at this house, you can see that it is not obviously not been lived in for several years. However, on the property record card, it's listed as 45% good, when it actually should be listed as salvage value or site value, or certainly no more than 10%. The next slide represents what the Division of Property Assessments requests from any county when we are working with them in their reappraisal process. You can see a column and a half of information there. This is not anything that just applies to Roane County. This applies to any county that we are assisting with a reappraisal or overseeing the reappraisal. This is what we asked for. This is what we have received from Roane County so far. And unfortunately, what we have received, these 4 items out of the column and a half, are not completely accurate or completely done. And so while we were able to list 4 things that we have received, and again, I'm not counting the flurry of emails I received yesterday, unfortunately, what we do have, we are not able to use. And that's the last slide that I have. All that together, again, let me go back to where I began. The mission of the Division of Property Assessments, the mission, the goal, the core, where our heart is making sure that the citizens of Tennessee, and in this case, the citizens of Roane County, have a fair, accurate, and confident appraisal. As a matter of fact, if I could sum up my presentation in one word, the word would be confident. Because in order for citizens to receive their assessment card in the mail and to receive their tax bill in the mail and to be able to write the check to pay that tax bill, they have to feel a great measure of confidence that it is accurate. And not only is it accurate, but it is fair, that they and their neighbors have received a fair appraisal that they can be confident in, and that everybody in the county is paying their fair share and no more or no less. Again, as I stated before, because of the issues we have found, and I have only touched the hem of the garment today in describing them, we think that the only way Roane County can receive a fair reappraisal that the citizens can be confident in is for the Division of Property Assessments to be empowered by this board, the Board of Equalization, to take over the reappraisal process and to use whatever means necessary to accomplish that. Now, this does mean that there would be some cost borne by Roane County, but I assure you we will work to make sure those costs are minimal and that we use every efficiency at our fingertips to get the job done right. I will tell you that the much greater cost, and I think leaders in Roane County would agree, the much greater cost would be to allow an inaccurate, unconfident reappraisal to be completed, therefore throwing that onto the laps of Roane County taxpayers. So, therefore, at the end of your packet you have our recommendation, which will be restated later, I believe, but for the record, I want to read to you what we believe the recommendation, the motion, the adoption of this committee should be. We recommend that the division be directed to take all steps necessary to ensure Roane County complies with the current reappraisal requirements set forth in Tennessee Code Annotated 67-5-1601 and the reappraisal plan previously approved for Roane County by this board. Those measures may include the use of state staff or temporary or contracted staff to complete the reappraisal in time to permit billing of taxes on the basis of the reappraised values and the assessments during the normal collection period for tax year 2015. The county should be informed that the cost incurred by the state to complete the reappraisal as described will be borne by the county and reimbursed to the state as required by law. I appreciate the time you have given me. I'll be glad to handle any questions, or we have several staff here that can certainly help with that. And we trust and ask that you all do everything you can for the citizens of Roane County in this circumstance. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mumpower. You've heard the report on behalf of the Division of Property Assessments. Do we have any questions, Mr. Mumpower? All right. Mr. Morgan, assume from Roane County, is here. Okay. Mr. Mumpower had approximately 17, 18 minutes. Would that give you enough time to present any materials or any information you'd like to provide? Please come forward.
Yes, sir, I would like to. Things out of my bag, if you would.
No problem.
Mr. Chairman, I should also point out to the board, County Mayor Ron Woody is here as well. I don't know that he has any desire to speak, but if you wish to recognize him, then he can let you know that.
So recognized.
Once again, thank you for allowing me 17, 18 minutes to speak. Hopefully I won't take that long.
Do you have materials you want to give those?
Yes, sir, I do.
Mr. Jones will take those from you and distribute those. You're free to begin whenever you would like to.
Yes, sir. Again, my name's David Morgan. I'm the Roane County Assessor, and I would first like to admit that, yes, we started out a little bit behind. I have lost actually 3 appraisers out of 4 appraisers in the last, in a 6-month period back in the early summer and fall of this year. And that combined with us changing computer systems, going from the old CAS4 system to a new Patriot system, and also trying to work on reappraisal, we did get quite a bit behind. I will admit that. I'll be the first to admit that. But over the course of the next 2 or 3 months, I hired 5 more people to work on the reappraisal. And at this current time, we've had 6 people working on the reappraisal full-time with a support staff of another 5 or 6 people downstairs. And we also saw the need, since we were so far behind, to contract with Patriot. So we've contracted 3 of their most experienced appraisers who also know their system to help us catch back up to where we need to be. And at this point, we've worked really hard. We've been working 12-hour days. Some of us have been working weekends. And we've really done our share to get back in line with where we need to be. I think one of the first things you'll see in your packet is I provided you all and the DPA with a revised schedule. I've now given 2 different revised schedules, but everything that should have been completed up through February 22nd, we're more or less complete with those things. We're actually about 80 to 85% complete with our entire reappraisal at this time. And according to TCL law, we still have another 45 days or so to go to finish things up and to tweak things, and that's currently what we're in the process of doing. And as far as the letter I received from this Board of Equalization around December the 29th, I feel that we've met all 4 objectives. One of the objectives was to provide reports as requested to the Division of Property Assessments, and we've been given plenty of reports and plenty of downloads to the DPA once we get the ability to run those reports at that point. We've also established a link of communication between our Patriot vendor and the State of Tennessee Division of Property Assessments, as they asked. And we provided the revised timetable that you're seeing now in front of you. And that was, Don Osborne asked us personally to do that here a few weeks ago, and we did that. And we made some adjustments, as he had asked us to do. And we're on pace with that revised time schedule. As I said, right now we're 80 to 85% complete with our reappraisal, with another 45 days to go that we're allowed to work on it. We've got a tentative date of April 15th set to do our final value meeting with the state DPA. And our intentions are to comply and meet that schedule. We're planning on being done with the entire reappraisal by the end of March, early April at the latest. That still gives us another 10, 11, 12 days before the final value meeting that we're tentatively scheduled to have with the state DPA. Before I go too much further, I would like to say I do appreciate the opinions of the DPA, but we definitely do not share those same opinions. I know what my staff's composed of. I know how hard we have worked and will continue to work for the citizens of Roane County. And we're planning on getting this reappraisal done. And it's going to be a successful reappraisal. And it's going to be timely, and it's going to be accurate. But I just want to make a few comments about some of the things Mr. Mumpower said a few minutes ago. First of all, our sales maintenance. At this point, it's totally up to date. We have every sale included in our database right now from 2014, except for the ones that have come in the last 2 or 3 days. Of course, they're still coming in 2 or 3 months later, and they typically do that. As far as the new construction, I had a staff member that was in charge of, assigning certain appraisers to go out and look at the new construction. Well, that staff member didn't do the job that I thought she was supposed to be doing. And that's probably my fault because I didn't have more oversight of that position. But since we were made aware 3 or 4 weeks ago by the DPA that we did not have all of the new construction listed in our system, we made a valiant effort to get out and get that new construction. We've had 4 appraisers full-time working on it since then, going out in the field and picking that up. And as you can see, you'll see the list of a lot of the new construction before you that we've done just in the last 4 weeks since we had our last meeting with the DPA. And we were thankful to them for bringing that to our attention because we share the same interests of the DPA, a successful and timely reappraisal that Roane County citizens can depend on. That's why we've been out trying to pick up the new construction, as you see there. As far as the farm and large tracts, those are complete. Matter of fact, and I know we ran probably a couple of weeks later on this, but we actually sent the DPA a rural land schedule yesterday, which goes back to the DPA is responsible for giving us the greenbelt values that was mentioned by Mr. Mumpower a few minutes ago. They've got that schedule now, so at any time they wish, they can give us the greenbelt values. That's ready. We're done with that. As I stated earlier, we're complete with everything that's on that schedule before you up through February 22nd. Our next set of deliverables is March the 15th. So we've got 20 or so days to work on those deliverables to get to the DPA. And, you know, we'll be wrapping up our reappraisal near that point. But just in summary, our mission is to be fair and equitable to the citizens of Roane County and make sure that we give fair and equitable assessments to Roane County, especially after the last reappraisal in 2010. It was a disaster. That's probably part of the reason I'm in office right now. I ran on that platform because the 2010 reappraisal was such a disaster. That was one of my main focus points, I guess, when I took office. I wanted to have a successful reappraisal for the citizens of Roane County. And I stand here before you humbly asking to allow myself and my staff to continue working on this reappraisal. We've put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in this. And my staff will tell you that. The people surrounding our offices will tell you that. We're working ourselves to death on behalf of the citizens of Roane County. And we just come here humbly asking you today to allow us to finish this reappraisal out. We've got another 15% to go with 45 days to go. And I assure you, as I'm standing here, we can finish that reappraisal successfully and timely, and the citizens of Roane County can have faith that that reappraisal will be correct. And if you have any questions at this point, I'll be glad to answer them. One more thing I had to give you actually was a MARS 2 report from the state of Tennessee. I've only got one copy, but it will actually show that so far our sales analysis is not that bad.
Any questions?
Apologize for not having more copies of that, but it was pretty thick. So
That's all right. It's all right. Any questions, Mr. Morgan? All right, hearing none. Okay, Mr. Tarwater.
yes, sir.
There we go. Mr. Morgan, nice to meet you. Thanks for being here. I'm Dwight Tarwater. I'm counsel to Governor Haslam. You've given us a packet of materials.
Yes,
here.
sir.
I'd like to ask you some questions about what you've provided us, please, sir. You have a list of things called new construction keyed in system.
Yes, sir.
What does that mean?
That means it is currently keyed into our new Patriot system that we're working on with the reappraisal. It means that our appraisers has gone out in the field. They've taken pictures of the lots. If it's just a lot, they've taken pictures of the houses, multiple pictures. They've been entered into our system. We can now actually enter pictures into our new Patriot computer system, which we couldn't do before. It means they've got the information, the square footage, number of bedrooms, things like that, on record. It's on record now as opposed to before it wasn't, possibly when the DPA went out there and took a look at some of those.
Have the properties been appraised?
Yes, sir, they have.
And so values for the reappraisals and values
Yes,
for
sir.
all of these are in your system and have been completed?
Yes, sir, except for the one list where I think it says it's in process because they're properties that we've just picked up in the last 2 or 3 days, and we've missed maybe 2 days this week due to snow.
Okay,
So
and
it's sort of hard to get everything keyed into the system
yes, sir.
when you're not there.
So there's another list that says under construction.
Yes,
And
that's
it looks like it's got about 15 or 20 entries
Yes, sir.
on there.
And as soon as we can get back in the courthouse, those will be keyed in within an hour or two. It's just those were ones that they picked up yesterday before we left.
Are these homes that are under construction? Is that what your
Yes, sir.
title means?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Or
it's-
possibly a mobile home.
And these appraisals are not done. Is that correct?
They are picked up by the appraiser. They have not been keyed into our system yet.
Okay.
But they will as soon as we can get back into the courthouse.
And what does currently working file mean?
Currently working file.
Looks like you've got a list of about 30 or 40 properties. parcel numbers and addresses?
I may have my list mixed up. That might be the one that has not been keyed yet, but all of those have been picked up by the appraisers. There's one list that, let's see, take a look at this, might clear a little bit up.
I just want to make sure I understand what it is
Right.
that you've provided us.
Give me just a second, I can tell you that better. Okay. The first list, obviously, is the new construction key to the system. That's in the system now. The DPA or anybody can pull it up and take a look at it. The next one is under construction. That's probably the ones that they just picked up, the 4 appraisers did yesterday before we left.
Well,
Am I missing one?
probably means what, sir? I'm trying to understand. Under construction means.
Oh, I'm sorry. I know what that is now. These are the ones that our appraisers went to look at, according to building permits, and they didn't even have a foundation or just had a foundation. We're not supposed to pick those up until they're near completion. So that's what that list is, under construction. I'm sorry.
Okay, so this is a list.
We're going to go back and pick those up
Yeah.
at some point when they're near construction.
Okay,
when it's
so
nearly completed.
Right. Okay, so that it would not be a timely thing to do to have
No,
an
sir.
appraisal.
It's going to be 6-8 months before these are even picked up.
I understand. Okay, thank you. And so what's currently working file mean?
That's the ones they've done in the last day or two before we left, and they just have not been keyed, which it might take an hour or two to key these.
Appraisals are done, they're just not in the system. Is
Yes,
that
sir.
correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and you said that,
And this probably includes these lists, some of the new construction that Mr. Mumpower was referring to earlier. We just found out here 2 months ago, we thought that we were done. We thought we had all the new construction for 2014, but apparently we didn't. We found out, so we immediately took corrective actions to try to get the new construction in place.
all right, and so you say you've completed 80 to 85% of the reappraisals.
Yes, sir.
For every parcel in Roane County.
Yes, sir. Right now, all the land values, there is a land value and a home value for all parcels in Roane County. We haven't finished with all the commercial and industrial yet. And according to our schedule, that's, I think, that listed for March 15th, I want to say, because we're still getting those commercial, industrial questionnaires that we sent out earlier in the year. We're getting those back still. We're supposed to analyze those, and that's part of, the March 15th schedule that we're supposed to have done. So we necessarily shouldn't have those done at this point, but we will by March 15th or
So-
before.
One more question, may I, Mr. Chair? You described the 2010 reappraisal as a disaster.
Yes, sir.
Is that what you said?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell me a little? There are lots of disasters, and
It does.
some things are more disastrous than others. So,
In a nutshell, it does. The 2010 reappraisal did not match market value. My goal and my staff's goal is to have our assessments match market value. 2010 reappraisal came in, it was 30, 35, 40% high overall, opposed to selling prices.
but it was done, correct? It
Yes,
was
it
completed.
done.
Okay. So the fact that it was a disaster is that something that?
Let's put it this way. We had 800, or the office at that point had over 800 property tax appeals from 2010-11, and I'm still trying to resolve some of those. We resolved probably 750. There's less than 50 left. That's why I call it a disaster. I mean, that was a huge, huge amount for a county of 36,000 plus parcels to have as far as state level appeals, 800 plus. That's just huge.
But what was done from an appraisal standpoint in 2010 is really not an excuse, is it,
Well,
for
I
the
was-
failure to do what you needed to do between now and 2015, right?
I wasn't in
Between then and
office then.
2015.
I wasn't in office then, obviously, but I don't think they used, I hate to say this, but I don't think a lot of common sense was used in that reappraisal. You have to get out on the street. You have to look at your value that you have in hand and say, does that match market value? That's the main qualifier. It has to match market value, and those values didn't.
I understand you're critical of the values.
Yes.
But as far as keeping you from doing your job, that didn't keep you from doing your job, did it?
No, sir. The 2010 reappraisal has nothing to do with this reappraisal, if that's what
All
you're
right.
asking.
All right. Thank you.
Yes, sir. You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Other questions, Mr. Morgan? Mr. Comptroller?
Let me check. You have said that you testified that you provided four reports before the 13th of February. Are you satisfied that these the reports that you provided were accurate and reasonable?
The reports and downloads that we have provided to the DPA are accurate to the best of our knowledge. Of course, there's going to be mistakes in any report because we're relying on data that was picked up over a 4 or 5 year period since the last 2010 reappraisal. You know, we could go out in the field, our appraisers could in 2011 and review a house, as we call it, and we could have it correct. But by the time we get back out there in 2016, 5 years later, review it, there could be changes that the DPA could have gone through and picked up, you know, a wood deck, a porch, an additional part of the building, anything like that is feasible. I mean, that's why we have our 4 and 5 year review to catch things like that, and also field checks when requested.
Okay, let me make sure I understand what the division says that you had provided before the 13th of February, assessment summaries, GIS parcel mismatch reports,
Yes.
a sale file download, and a parcel file download.
Yes, sir.
And then you provided additional information, I guess, yesterday.
Yes, we did. Some of the other things they asked for 3 or 4 weeks ago in a meeting. But we, as far as I'm concerned, we have provided all the reports and downloads they have asked us for. They may not have all the information since we're still fine-tuning our reappraisal at this point, so things are changing, and we have been giving the DPA updated reports after we make certain changes over the last few weeks. So they may not have had everything by February 13th. We've had 3 weeks of snow in East Tennessee, and it's hard to run an office when your employees can't come to work. So we're probably a couple of weeks behind just due to that. And I don't want to make excuses, but that's the truth. I mean, we've missed half the last 2 weeks because the courthouse has been closed. So once we get in there, we're trying to work long hours when we can and get the DPA the reports that they need because we want them to have our information.
I don't
We're
know.
not trying to hide anything.
Sure. I don't know if you've seen this list before, have you? I don't know if you. Let me give it to you. Well, why don't you testify on the record? Testify on the record. Yeah.
For the record, that is the list that Mr. Mumpower referred to of normal reappraisal reports and activities that you would expect to see in the course of the reappraisal work.
Would you like me to go down these lines?
Yeah, why don't you?
Sure, I don't mind. First one, the cell file downloads. We've given them at least 3 of those to my recollection. And what that is, it's the cell file maintenance. When any sale that occurs, we have to decide where it's a qualified sale or not qualified sale. Not qualified sale might be something like father sells something to his son or something like that. We typically don't qualify those sales. But we've given them 2 or 3 of those that I know of as we get more of the sales put into our Patriot system. We sent some data quality reports actually yesterday to the DPA, and those would have been done 2 weeks ago, but due to snow, we couldn't. Same thing with the statistical reports. We sent a few of those yesterday. One of those included an analysis of the years, say, 1900 to 1920 homes versus 1920 to 1950 homes, and where our current value was compared to the actual selling price. We sent those yesterday. Leasehold interest valuation, that's one of the things on March 15th schedule.
Okay.
So we've not sent that yet. New construction report. Obviously, we're picking up new construction. We're continuing to do that. We've still got a few left. There's some mobile homes that we haven't got and a few other homes that we're earnestly trying to get those in the next few days. Snow is just the latest. Property report. Progress report of completed parcels. We told the DPA 3 weeks ago we were about 85% complete. They've come by and had us print entire maps for them to go out and look at in the field. We printed off probably 10, 15 maps, which consist of about 2,700 parcels at this point. So we've been giving them those. And those have complete home values and land values on them. It's nearly ready to release to the public, sorry. Base rate development, we've given them our base rate. That was developed and given to them probably 3 weeks ago, I want to say, maybe 4 weeks ago. Small tract guide and analysis, we've given them that. We gave them that probably 6 weeks ago, I want to say. I may be a little bit off on some of my dates here. But commercial industrial, I skipped a rural land schedule analysis, I'm sorry. That was what we sent to them yesterday, and that is what they need to develop the greenbelt values for Roane County. So we did send that yesterday, and we apologize for sending it so late, but due to the snow, we just haven't been able to get on and work on it. The next one's the commercial industrial valuation analysis. Again, that's something we're still receiving those questionnaires back, and we're supposed to take that data, combine it with everything else that we have available to us, and do an analysis of that, and that's scheduled for March 15th as well on our revised schedule, as well as the income and expense questionnaires. They're still coming in. Parcel file download, we have given them at least 2, maybe 3 of those, and that typically goes hand in hand with their GIS parcel mismatch report. Our initial GIS parcel mismatch report, I want to say, showed about 88 mismatches. That typically means that either 88 parcels are not in our GIS system but are in our assessment system, or vice versa. Well, we worked on it, and we looked at those, and we figured out what the problems were, and the next time we ran one a couple of weeks later, it went from 88 parcels to around 21 parcels. I think the one we ran here just a week or so ago had 0 parcels, meaning we didn't have anything that wasn't in our assessment system, that wasn't in our GIS system, which is great. That definitely showed progress. And I know we sent the DPA at least 2 of those, maybe 3 of those total. As far as assessment summaries, that's something we can print anytime they want. I sent them one of those. Matter of fact, I put it in a packet of information to Keith Gibson just earlier this week, just an updated one, because every time we make changes in our system, we try to give them an assessment summary, because you can see the dollar value change in the land value and the improvement value and the total value to the county. Usually that's up in the $1 million range or so, but we can give them those anytime, and we have a value change report. We sent the first one to them yesterday. That was something new to me as a new assessor, never been through a reappraisal before until now. I didn't know what that report was, so I got on the email, started asking the DPA, and they told me what it was, and I got in touch with our Patriot folks, and they said, yeah, that's a standard report. We can run that. And I said, well, I've never seen one. And they said, well, you wouldn't. It's only during reappraisal time. So we sent that to them yesterday. Let's see. Sales verification forms. We've got all of those for farm tracts, for commercial tracts, for residential tracts. And that was a big packet I left for Keith Gibson, and I picked up 2 or 3 days ago. But we do those sales verification forms. We actually send out more than we're supposed to. There's a rule that you only send to so many types of sales. We send out to more than that. We go above and beyond what we're supposed to on that. Just to try to get good sales information back. Just determine if it's a qualified sale or not. That's the whole reason for those. And I'm not sure about the special property analysis. I guess that's just some of those outliers that we're out in the field trying to look at now besides the new construction. You know, if something's coming in on our bell curve and it's an outlier, we're looking at it to try to find out why. Why doesn't this sale match what we've got as current value? And those are the kind of things we're looking at as well while we're out there picking up new construction. But I think that pretty much answers most of your questions on the list.
Okay, now you have testified as to the completeness of what you've done. What about the accuracy of what you've done? Are you satisfied that the appraisals you do fairly reflect the fair market value of the property?
Well, I can just attest that since I've taken office, I strive for accuracy, and I strive for my people to have accuracy in the work they do. I cannot necessarily speak for what happened before 2012, although we're using their data, but when we're out in the field, we look at that data. If anything is wrong, we correct it.
Now, what about the completeness of the reports you filed? You testified you have.
Well, so far, all of our reports and downloads have been accepted by the DPA, and I've been told they are at acceptable format.
Okay, well, thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, sir.
Mr. Tarwater.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Morgan, just one or two more. You've
Yes,
told us that you've been shorthanded.
Yes, sir. We had been. Now we have a full staff.
All right, so
Last 6
you're
months.
up and running pretty good now.
Yes, sir. We have more people working in the appraisal department than we ever have, at least since I've been in office. There's typically 4 appraisers. We've got 6 working right now in our office, 6 full-time people working on the reappraisal, as well as myself and 3, 4, 5 other support people downstairs, GIS department, office people that work on it when we're needed. And Patriot, of course, those 3 folks.
Right. You heard Mr. Mumpower's presentation, which was complete and informative. He's suggesting that we direct that division to give you guys a hand down there to help you out. Do you object to that?
Yes, sir, I do.
On what basis?
Well, the division helped the assessor's office out in 2010, and we see the results of that. I don't want to be too critical, but you know, we feel that we know our county and we can complete this reappraisal timely and accurately. Who better knows our county than us? Our appraisers have lived there most of their lives. They've worked there, except for the new ones. I mean, they've lived there, but we know our county, and we feel that it's in our best interest to do a good job for the citizens of Roane County. We know the trend and direction that our values need to go, because you know, a lot of the values we've had since 2010, for instance, a lake home we'll have it valued at $500,000 and it's selling for $250,000 and $300,000. I mean, that's a good qualified sale, and so we know the direction our reappraisal needs to go. It needs to go downward, you know, in the most areas, but we're going to let the numbers and the sales dictate that. I personally think in 2010 that there just maybe was not enough sales there in 2008 and 9 to lower the values for the 2010 reappraisal, because the economy was going up in 2006, 7, and 8, and it just dropped off middle of 2008. That's sort of my opinion of why the values were so high. But now we've had fairly consistent sales over the last 3 or 4 years, and of course we're particularly looking at 2014 sales and 13 sales for a reappraisal, and they're pretty steady, and we feel that we're doing a good job of matching the sales up to our current values. We're taking a special look at that. Even the new construction that we've just picked up, we're keying them directly into the system. And one that I looked at the other day, I want to say our system showed that it would be around $360,000. And senior appraiser Jerry Baddock's here, he can testify to this. He looked over at the young appraiser and he said, "Do you think that this is accurate?" And he says, yeah, I think that's accurate, you know, within plus or minus 5%. And he's an experienced, you know, 5-year appraiser. And we said, well, that makes us feel good then about what we're doing, because like I said earlier, we had common sense enough to look at our value and say, does this match reality? And it did. So that gave me a good feeling in my stomach, I guess, to know that our system's working. The Patriot system's working, our data's working. And when we go out and pick up a brand new property and feed the data into our system, it spits out a value that is accurate and relative, and that makes me feel good.
Thank you for answering my question,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman,
Jones?
just a comment. If the motion before you and the action that has been proposed by the Division of Property Assessments is adopted by the board, I'd just like to share with you my view of how that will play out. If that motion is adopted tomorrow or sometime shortly thereafter, the same division employees will show up at Mr. Morgan's office and try to verify what you've heard today. They have heard representations like this before, but they have not been able to verify them. If they do show up after this motion is adopted, what will change is that if they find that the representations are correct, that this work has been done, then they'll be happy to write a clear report, and the county will owe the state nothing because we will not have expended any effort. On the other hand, we can't keep going back in there meeting after meeting and be told that things are as they should be, but have no proof of that. And so we've reached the point where we have to say, well, if we are going to have to go in and do the work ourselves, which has happened before, that the state has had to do the work themselves, the county will be responsible for the cost. That is what changes. The work will be done by or on behalf of the state for the county, and the county will get the bill. But you've heard Mr. Mumpower's representations that they will keep that cost as minimal as possible, and if they're able to verify what you've heard today from Mr. Morgan, then this should be a short story.
I heard Mr. Morgan say something a moment ago to the effect of the 2010 appraisal in Roane County. He blamed some of that on the Division of Property Assessments. Do you have any thoughts on that?
No, sir. 2010 is a long time ago even for me, and we certainly could delve into that, perhaps hear from people here today who have some familiarity with that. But the 2010 program up there was approved. Certainly there are always appeals. I don't know on the face of it whether that represents the 600 or 700 appeals represents an extraordinary number or not. Certainly it's the case that we as an office, statewide office, have seen a tripling or quadrupling of the number of appeals we've received statewide because of this peculiar real estate market. So it wouldn't surprise me that Roane, as well as other counties, had an increased number of appeals, but that does not indicate on its face that there's a problem.
Well, he mentioned 800 appeals out of 36,000 parcels. That's roughly 2.33%, somewhere in there.
Yes, sir.
2.25%. What's the typical percentage?
There probably is no typical. It depends so much on the particular county and how the market has played out in that county. A lot of East Tennessee counties that have lakefront properties, it was the devil of a time trying to get those values correct. There was so much speculation in the original purchase price of a lot of those lakefront lots. Many of the developments have failed, and therefore the folks who paid a particular price maybe didn't get what they bargained for. So East Tennessee has been difficult, certainly for every county.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mumpower, did you have anything that you wanted to add regarding the role of EPA in 2010? If you don't mind.
I thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, members of the committee. Just a couple things. Number one, in particular, when the assessor said that he didn't necessarily want the assistance we could provide because the state had provided it in 2010, that is certainly not the case. We did not take over the reappraisal in 2010, I think, as you could have assumed from that comment. You know, in this case, again, and as to the reports delivered, I would have to say that accuracy is a question. And, you know, being an East Tennessean myself, this is probably a regular saying, not just in East Tennessee, but everywhere. The best thing to do when you get in a hole is just stop digging. And this is a case where we want to go in and start helping fill the hole back up. The charge of the Division of Property Assessments is to ensure accuracy and confidence in a reappraisal. The county needs to have the assessment or have the reappraisal finished. They can send out tax bills, they can collect revenue, open the schools, pave the roads, run the jail, et cetera, and so on. And that's what we want to be about.
I would think that timeliness and accuracy have to go hand in hand.
It is ever so more important to be accurate in a timely manner, and time is a pressure we all face. And I do believe we can go back in and get things back on schedule in such a way that both citizens can be confident and government can operate.
All right. Any other member have anything they want to add? We can still continue to hear from either Mr. Mumpower or Mr. Morgan. Comptroller Wilson.
We have at least two issues here. We have the timeliness issue, and it's admittedly behind schedule. There's no question about that, and he's proposed a schedule, the assessor, that conceivably could work if everything comes together. We further have the accuracy question that we've had review of the records, and they have not been satisfactory. I personally have difficulty seeing what the problem is with the DPA going in, and if in fact they're doing a good job, simply ratified at the time. I just don't see any problem with that. I honestly don't. There's sufficient evidence presented to show that we have a problem, and the question is what to do with it. And you know, if in fact that he's got staffing all that in place, then it should be a very simple, very quick process. And if it's not, then we're there, and I think that need to be there.
Do we have any other Tennesseans who wish to be heard on this matter? Mayor, if you would identify yourself.
Ron Woody, County Executive, Roane County. I appreciate this committee allowing me to speak. I do not have any prepared remarks, but I would like to make a few comments. I think our Chief of Staff said it right. It's a issue of confidence. I had met yesterday with city managers. A week ago, I met with our city mayors. This impacts Roane County, but it also impacts Anderson County due to the city of Oak Ridge being both in Anderson and Roane County. Our leadership at our cities is concerned about this issue. leadership in our county is concerned about this issue. I have, of course, written a letter, and I've talked to individuals at the state, and I would ask for you all to, I don't like to spend county money, but it is very important that our citizens have confidence in our process and trust what government is doing. And I would appreciate assistance from the county executive's office. I think I can speak, or we have a county commissioner here that feels the same way, and some of our city officials. Hopefully you all would come in, the department, and see that everything's okay, and would be able to put a little check by your work that says things are going the way we would like to see them go. But we are willing to spend money with the state to ensure that we have an accurate reappraisal program. And hopefully it will give us the confidence that we can proceed with the activities of our county. This has been something that has taken a lot of my time. It's taken, I know, a lot of time of other officials, and we would like to get it resolved. So that's my comment regarding your motion. Let me just add a little bit about the 2010 reappraisal, if I may. Of course, Roane County experienced the Kingston ash spill in 2008, and there wasn't a lot of transactions that took place on real estate. As been mentioned here, there was a lot of speculation on our lakefront property. We had a lot of property that increased over the last 20 years on the lakefront that is probably going to have some adjustments. Probably what the state may have seen in their analysis is some indication of a recession, that prices were soft, and ours did go up in 10. And we may see that correction, of course, in 15. That I don't know. I think we talked to our realtors. The important thing, again, is having confidence in the process. And we are kind of looking to you for some of that assistance. And from a county standpoint, we're there standing ready to help, and we would like for you all to come in and assist us in rebuilding confidence. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. County Executive. Any further comments? Comptroller Wilson?
I suppose we need a motion.
One will be in order.
Based on the Division of Property Assessments findings and recommendations, I move the division be directed to take all steps necessary to ensure Roane County complies with the current reappraisal requirements set forth in TCA 67-5-1601 and the reappraisal plan previously approved for Roane County by this board. Those measures may include the use of state staff or temporary or contracted staff to complete the reappraisal in time to permit the billing of taxes on the basis of the reappraised values and assessments during the normal collection period for the tax year 2015. The county should be informed that the cost incurred by the state to complete the reappraisal as described will be borne by the county and reimbursed to the state as required by law.
That's a proper motion. It's properly second. Any discussion on the motion? All right, hearing none, we'll now take a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. By voice vote, the item passes as approved. So the motion prevails. If I might make a suggestion to DPA as they travel over to Roane County, there's a really good Mexican restaurant right on exit 347 across from McDonald's. So, all right. Next item is consideration of contested rules amendments. Mr. Jones. And I believe we have had a legal pad here with sign up for speakers.
Yes, sir. That is the case,
Okay.
and I'll pass that down. I have only one person, Andrea McKinnon of the law firm of Evans and Petrie in Memphis, has indicated she wishes to testify. I've heard from Mr. Will Denami of the Association of Assessors statewide, who also wishes to address you. That is it, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to give you just a quick background on what you have before you. Your staff originally brought to you these three amendments of the contested case rules. that the board adopted. These rules supplement the general Administrative Procedures Act rules that govern how property tax appeals as a contested case are handled. The three areas, first of all, and I'm speaking from material supplied to you, in particular from the notice that was published in the Administrative Register. Rule .03 simply says that electronic filing would be a requirement. If the board currently has electronic filing, you can file an appeal on the internet, either download the written form and mail it, or complete it online and pay online the appeal filing fee. Electronic filing would be required for more than 3 parcels in a given year by any single taxpayer or by any agent or practitioner filing appeals on more than 3 parcels in a given year. So just an attempt to say that because electronic filing is better from both the taxpayer, the user standpoint, and the agency standpoint, it's time to go that way. We would envision that if it constitutes a hardship, if the invocation of the rule constitutes a hardship, then we would waive that requirement and work with the filer to make sure they still get their appeal filed. The last rule is Rule .17, and it simply clarifies that the appeal processing fee is $7 per parcel, which goes a short way towards defraying the expense of processing those appeals. So it merely clarifies. It does not increase a fee, merely clarifies. So those are the two non-controversial aspects. We did get some testimony on the mandatory electronic filing, saying, well, maybe you should use a different number. But we would be committed as a staff to make exceptions where it is shown that that electronic filing would be a hardship in a particular case. The rule that has caused the most outcry, I would say, on both sides of the issue, the assessors community basically proposed that they needed something more than was showing up in the present appeal form to allow them to prepare for the appeals, to allow them to say to an administrative judge contemplating a schedule of the hearing, I need more to know about whether this thing needs to go to a hearing or whether I may be able to work out a settlement with the taxpayer. The overwhelming majority of appeals at the board, and they number some 5,000 to 8,000 a year these days, the overwhelming number of those are withdrawn or settled. Most of them are filed by professional practitioners. Most of them are withdrawn or settled. In many cases, relief is granted. In many cases, the appeal will simply be non-suited, if you will. This particular rule would say that when you file an appeal form, you've got to disclose what is referred to as a statement of rationale, identifying one of the 3 approaches to value that appraisers go by that indicate why you think the value is wrong. It does not require a full-blown appraisal. It is a function that the staff would simply make sure that there was the required statement. In other words, you complete the appeal form and you attach a brief statement of rationale. If the rationale is provided and the assessor thought it was insufficient, then that would be tested by motion before the administrative judge. Practitioner files the motion, judge rules, like any other case. There's also the traditional discovery methods that are available to practitioners and the assessors in these cases where they can discover the other side's case. What we're talking about here is threshold information to give the assessor an idea of, is this a case I need to work up specific evidence relative to this property as opposed to just relying on my CAMA system to give me a value. So that is the basis of the assessor's proposal. The board has included it with these other 2 proposals in these draft amendments. And we've excited a fair amount of discussion, as I'm sure you all have seen through your websites or your email lists. And we have some folks here to address those concerns.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Little, did you want to be recognized?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask that the board take up Rule 600-01-.03 and the amendment to Rule 600-01-.17 first. Perhaps ascertain how many have any objection to that.
I would take that as a motion. And I'll second the motion to separate the issues. Any objection to that? All right. So I think we've heard Mr. Jones describe both of those proposed, those 2 sections of the rules. So Any discussion? Well, does anybody wish to be heard on Rule 060-01-.03 or .17?
Mr. Chairman, we signed it.
Okay, well, we wrote testify at the top, and so if other people want to testify, I just need to write yea or nay. So,
Yeah, we'll certainly. I've got about looks like 6 or 7 names. So if you'd like to testify, please raise your hand, please. Mr. Catnanny. Mr. Catnanny is on the list,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, and Mr. Carruthers.
okay.
And okay, again, in the interest of exactly, Mr. Gravely. And so if you hear the previous witness make a statement, and it's exactly what you agree with, we'll ask for a show of hands about who agrees with that statement, but otherwise, please don't repeat the testimony. Okay? The same. Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, specifically what I was interested in is there anyone here who wants to talk about or testify to Rule .03,
Yeah.
which just deals with electronic filing?
I think
Simply the electronic filing. That's what I was trying to get down to.
The treasurer's trying to separate the issues here.
Just trying to get down to whether there's anybody that has any issues with the electronic filing rule. There is. Or we got one person.
All right.
We'll hear from that person.
Well, let's take up, without objection, let's take up number 3 here regarding electronic filing. Sir, as you come forward, I would ask that you identify yourself for the record. How long would you like to have? I'm not guaranteeing you get.
This particular one, it's going to take about 10 seconds.
All right.
Okay.
Daylight's burning. Let's go.
I'm Jay Catnanny. I'm a registered agent. Also, I'm a licensed real estate appraiser with the state of Tennessee. And with regard to what Mr. Leary said, back in the fall, Kelsey had our continuing education for the registered agents, and I asked him at that particular time, was he prepared on this? Like, right now we can file electronically the appeal form, but the other data, they have no way of receiving that right now. So this rule, if anything, is premature along that line. I know he said he's working on it. Like Davidson County, I can file everything to them, just upload it, scan it, send it in. They don't have that. So basically what we're going to have to do is file the appeal electronically and then turn around and mail in, 45, 50 pages of support documentation. And that's all I've got to say.
Mr. Jones.
Just a quick response. This rule only pertains to the appeal form itself. We are, in fact, there is an existing capability to upload some supporting documents, but we're only talking about a requirement of electronic filing for the appeal form itself, and that certainly can be done and is done by Mr. Catnanny and others today. So this rule only applies to the form itself. You can mail in, hand deliver, ever how you want to transmit any additional information you want to supply in support of the appeal. And someday, hopefully, we'll get to the point that of the capability that he's referenced regarding Davidson County, where all the information can be submitted via an upload. We have limited capability to allow electronic uploads, but all we're talking about here is the appeal form itself as a requirement.
Treasurer Lillard.
But Mr. Catnanny, are you just raising the issue that because you are going to have to mail in your supporting forms, you don't see the need to have to file electronically the actual appeal form itself? Is that the point you're raising?
Well,
or-
it just
I'll make sure
doesn't
I
make
understand.
any sense, basically, to us, that you can submit the documentation one way, then turn around and have to send it in, voluminous. I know what they're going through, and I know what the administrative procedures people are going through. You got to look at it, the problem they had with the official certificates, and it's just going to make it worse for them, in my opinion. I mean, they just resolved that, where they did away with them, basically. And so I just see the same thing over again. I mean, they're going to get, going to file an appeal form electronically, and then where is this one to the mail, the match, and this, and going over to the administrative law judges? I just think it's going to be a problem.
All right, Mr. Jones, would you give us your view of that point? Because, I mean, the gentleman raises a point here.
Yes, the appeal is commenced by filing the appeal form with the notice of the county board action. That certainly can be uploaded as a part of the appeal process now. We don't think that this rule creates any filing requirements that can't be accommodated through the existing electronic filing. The presentation of an appraisal report as an exhibit at a hearing is a relatively rare process. Remember my saying that many of these appeals are withdrawn or settled. Those documents can be mailed, submitted, emailed, ever how the practitioner and the parties can agree, But we're only talking about the appeal form, and that's the document that lets the world know an appeal has been filed on that parcel so that we can begin to plan for hearings. That needs to be filed electronically.
Are you saying that most or a good number of the appeal forms are the only document filed in that appeal? As
Absolutely.
It's
Yes, sir. That and the County
of?
Board of Equalization notice are the only forms that are filed in the vast majority of appeals.
Mm-hmm. I mean, do you agree with that statement, Mr. Catanani? I mean, that
That's
most
true, because that's the way it is now. But
okay.
if you change it,
right.
then it's not going to be that way.
Well, but I think what the gentleman's saying, and Mr. Jones is saying, is that many of the appeals are filed simply by filing the lead form, and they're ultimately disposed of without any further proceeding as such. And if the electronic filing were required, then on some individuals, then that would be the only document ever filed, and it would expedite the process. I think you're probably right in those that where you have a lot of supporting documents, which is apparently not the majority of cases, but you do have some that have a lot of supporting documents where you're dividing the two between the electronic and the mailing of it. You know that you're right, it may appear a little incongruous on its face, but what Kelsey's saying is that a number of the forms that are filed, the lead form, the actual appeal form, it's the only document filed in the case. And they, obviously, like many courts, you can go to just about any federal court these days and many state courts, and they require electronic filing. I mean, that's absolutely required. You can't file paper with them anymore. So that's, I think, what this is getting to, as I understand it. So I appreciate your point, though. Your point's valid in regard to those that have a lot of supporting documents.
Well, it's just the way it's been done. I
right.
mean, that's the way it is now, but with the new procedure,
Well, and it points up the need to continue working hard to get it to where you can file everything, supporting documents and all by upload, as opposed to having to mail some of them and electronically file some of them. So I appreciate your point. Thank you for being willing to make it.
Further discussion on that rule, Ms. McKinnon? And just be clear, we're on the rule regarding electronic filing. Okay.
Hello, my name is Andrea McKinnon. I work with the law firm of Evans Petrie, as Mr. Kelsey had mentioned earlier. I don't have a lot to say on this point, but one thing I do want to mention is that many of us have found a way to automate our appeal system. We have a image of the form, and we have our computer system interface with this particular form and fill in data from our system. So we can pull the parcel number, the owner name, our contended values, all of this information. So we have this system where it's very much automated, and it's a matter of signing and notarizing. Well, in many other areas, especially in the tax, if you are going to do something automated, you can, Tennessee, for instance, in sales tax has EDI filing. You upload your entire file, and it's in a I can't remember the technical names for it, but it's basically one big file that interfaces with the Department of Revenue system. So the return and all of the information, and there's even an electronic signature allowed. Well, that's not what we're talking about here. So what you're talking about is now that we're going to be manually entering information into an individual online screen each time we file the appeal, and then supplementing with all of these documents that we're going to have to mail in. So I guess my point is I recognize that electronic filing is the way of the future. The state board's not going to be able to put off indefinitely requiring electronic filing. But I do think, as Mr. Catanani said, it is premature. That before you require electronic filing on that scale, that you need to have some provisions for electronic interface with a state board system for us to be able to upload. And I think it's reasonable that we should not only have to, we'd be able to upload, but we'd also be able to upload the documents. We're going to go submit something electronically and turn around and mail in hard copies of documents. I mean, it needs to be one way or the other. When we're ready for electronic filing, when we can develop a system where we can interface, and we have IT professionals in our office that can help us work with the state board to have a system to interface with yours, we can simply upload this into the system along with any other documents that we need to. And the County Board of Equalization Appeal is a required, or decision is a required form that does have to be submitted. So that means every state board appeal form will have to then have the county board decision letter mailed in. And on the electronic filing, unless this has changed, there's a follow-up document with an affidavit that has to be signed. So there is still going to be paper flowing through the office.
Thank you, Ms. McKinnon. Any questions for Ms. McKinnon?
Just a
Mr. Jones?
quick comment. The additional documentation presently required, the county board notice can be uploaded now. It's possible that Evans and Petrie has not utilized the existing electronic filing and is not familiar with that. As I hear the concern, it is that the practitioner's existing system, which is basically a database of their own with the parcels that they represent, cannot be smoothly formatted to the mass filing of all of those documents. Instead, they will have to take their information and convert it on a parcel-by-parcel basis to what we're asking for. Well, you know, I and I'm sure our IT folks would be willing to work with them to try to find a more seamless way of allowing electronic filing. But right now, there are many practitioners who simply submit the file electronically based on the few items of information that we require. And I can pass out a sample appeal form. It's less than 2 pages. So really, we're talking about many taxpayers already use electronic filing, and it's apparently not an issue for them to integrate their own database to provide the information that we need. But if there's a better way to do it, we'll certainly be willing to work with Evans and Petrie and any other firm that wants to do that. We're interested in that as well.
Ms. McKinnon, do you have anything else you want to add?
Again, that I don't think this is really our main focus here today, so I don't want to spend too much time on it. But I do want to say that electronic filing, we recognize that's where it's going to need to go. I, one time, was in a tax accountant with a Fortune 500 company. At one time, a long time ago, I processed their sales and use tax returns. It was an extraordinary amount of information, but we uploaded it. There was no way we could have physically, manually done all of that. And electronic filing, if we can upload into the system rather than manually entering into an online screen, I think that that's fine. But we would need time to develop that. We would need time to work with the state board, and we would need some assurances that the state board would, in fact, work with us on that process.
Treasurer Lillard.
And I would just point out, I'm a graduate tax attorney myself, and so, you know, with courts and with the Internal Revenue Service and all the other bodies involved, they all have different formats that you have to electronically file things in. The U.S. tax court's filing system is totally different from that used by the U.S. claims courts, you know, which is 2 courts with tax jurisdiction. So from that standpoint, I don't know that what they're proposing here, you know, is much different from that in regard to your experience. I do think, and Kelsey, I assume you're saying that you're going to work with people like the lawyers at Evans and Petrie to try to give some transition time to get, because there is a need, as she points out, to make sure that they can adapt their system or whatever, or work some accommodation with y'all about that, you know, in terms of if this rule is adopted.
Yes, sir. Of course, apart from the lag time to even get a rule in effect, which is probably 4 months, something like that, considering all the various approvals, it's in the discretion of the board how they want to phase in this requirement. Certainly, we'd be amenable to trying to accommodate, working with any practitioner to accommodate their database in a more seamless way of electronic filing. The form I just handed out is an appeal form filed by Taylor Carruthers, one of our other witnesses who will be speaking here today. They have fully embraced the electronic filing concept, and you see the brevity of this form. We're not talking about a lot of effort to complete this document. In fact, the major thing we're talking about today is adding a little information to it. If you look on the back of that form, it states, question 16, what do you believe the fair market value of the above described property was on January 1 of the assessment year? And then the next question is, on what information or evidence is the above opinion of value based? I think what the main thing we're going to talk about is how much information needs to be put in that box. As you can see, what's in there now is just the word income, which doesn't tell the assessor much. But I show you this to demonstrate it's not a difficult process now to file electronically. Many of our practitioners do that, but we're always willing to try to work with an individual practitioner, particularly one as active as Evans and Petrie, try to make it as smooth as possible.
Thank you. But I think the comments
Treasurer?
today do point up the need to work hard to try to get to the point where you can upload all the supporting documents too. So
And the only required supporting document now is the county board form, and if the statement of rationale that we're talking about is, as I envision it, a one-page document, it'll be no different than the county board.
There are many times when a practitioner would want to supply supporting documentation beyond what the
Absolutely, a 300-page appraisal.
support his or her case. So,
Yes, sir.
okay.
Further discussion? Chair will entertain a motion regarding Rule 0600-01-.03.
I move to adopt.
It's properly moved, properly second. Any further discussion? Hearing no one, I take a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Item passes on voice vote.
It is a roll call vote. Without objection, I'll record each of the 5 of you as voting aye.
Just to be official about
Okay.
it. So if you don't
Let me
mind.
ask first, Mr. Lillard, yes or no? Aye. Mr. Roberts? Aye. Mr. Tarwater? Aye. Mr. Wilson? Aye. Chairman Hargett? Aye. Okay.
Thank you, Treasurer Lillard. I'd forgotten that, so thank you very much. So now by a vote of 5-0, the rule is approved. All right, so now let's look at, I believe we were separating out and going to Rule 0600-01-.17. Anybody want to be recognized regarding the initial processing fee of $7 per parcel? Mr. Carruthers?
I just basically have a question. The $7 filing fee, is that also included with the $9 processing fee that you charge?
That's the concern. Under the present rule and the statute, we actually have had to charge $2 more for an electronic appeal. It makes no sense, but that's the way the present rule is worded, that an additional $2 is required for an electronic appeal, and basically this simply says that the processing fee is uniformly $7.
Okay.
I don't really have a problem with the
You're getting a $2 discount.
$2 discount. Gotcha.
I was about to say, don't close after sale. All right, so any further discussion? Chair would entertain a motion. Sorry, sir.
My name's Davis Gravely, Gravely Property Tax, Inc., and I'm a registered agent with the state. And concerning the fee process, it's always been that the fee process, Kelsey's office has to bill you usually about 3, maybe 4 times a year as to whether you win, whether you withdraw, whatever the circumstance of that appeal, how the outcome comes, is the final process. My contention is that, and others may not agree with it, but why not set a flat fee up front? It could be the average of what the state usually charges. For one, it would cause his office not to have to recalculate every quarter a fee structure based on what's happened with the appeals. If there's a flat fee up front, then it's done and no more effort is had to be afforded to that process. And that could be simply arrived at maybe the average of what it cost the state based on the appeals and the final process of those appeals. Basically, that's all I have on that.
Mr. Jones, you have anything?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Before Mr. Gravely leaves, he'll probably be swarmed by those of my employees who are here supporting that idea. They would love not to have to adjust refunds or process refund checks based upon the extent to which taxpayer prevailed, but that's the existing law. But if we can get to the point suggested by Mr. Gravely, we'd love to do that, but obviously we can't do that under the existing statute.
All right. Chair would entertain a motion regarding this rule. Properly moved, properly seconded. All right. Call the roll if you, any discussion? Hearing none, call the roll, Mr. Jones.
Mr. Lillard? Aye. Mr. Roberts? Aye. Mr. Tarwater? Aye. Mr. Wilson? Yes. Chairman Hargett?
Aye. By a vote of 5-0, the rule prevails. All right. Let's get to the one you've all been waiting for. Rule 060-01-.08. I do have a list. Mr. Nanami, I want to start with you. How long would you like?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can speak for probably 2 minutes, and then I'd like the opportunity to rebut any other testimony
All right.
at the conclusion.
I'll tell you what, I normally wouldn't do that. We'll certainly call on you and give you the opportunity to answer any questions we might have as a result of any other testimony. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you 5 minutes. I'm going to give others 5 minutes. Okay. I'm going to ask you to try not to be repetitive, redundant of those who come before you. I will tell you, I believe you are the only person I have representing the assessors on the list. Yes, I do have a list if anybody else wants to sign up.
Chairman, how many people do we have on the list?
We have Ms. McKinnon, Mr. Carruthers, Mr. Catnany, and Mr. Gravely.
Okay.
Mr. Button. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Lee, possibly.
Oh, man, it's All-Star Day. All right, Mr. Donami, please go ahead. Your 5 minutes begins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This rule that we're proposing is very simply to filter out the abusive practice that we have found that is increasing across the state, and that practice is to file perhaps 100 appeals when you only intend to move forward on 10. And what it does is it makes the assessor's office prepare and spend a lot of resources and time preparing for 100 appeals, 90 of which are purely leverage on the other 10. And what we see happening is there are practitioners who will say something to the effect of, if you will work with me on these 10, I will withdraw these other 90. We think that is an unfair practice. It's not good for the taxpayers. The assessors of property is not their role or their goal to try to raise people's taxes. It's to make sure it's a fair and equitable process, and that also applies to the appeals process. So we bring this forward to make sure that the appeals that are filed are genuine. If they would just include a statement of rationale to show that they are, in fact, a genuine appeal that they filed in good faith. Furthermore, it doesn't apply for less than 250,000 residential. This is for 250,000 up commercial industrial appeals. We put in what we're requesting is a 30-day window from the time you file the appeal to put forth that statement of rationale. If you are intending to move forward after 30 days and haven't had time, there's an additional 30-day window, so you would have 2 months once you filed an appeal to actually put forth something to show that it is, in fact, a bona fide appeal. We see this as something akin to if this were a court and you were filing a complaint, that you actually have a complaint you're filing rather than simply noticing a defendant that you're going to sue them. So simply what we think we're asking for is a statement of rationale. It's not intended in any way to harm the taxpayer. It's just to filter out the frivolous from the actual appeals.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Donami. Any questions for Mr. Donami at this time? Ms. Tarwater?
This practice of hitching a lot of wagons to one or two horses, how widespread is that practice?
You may actually be able to find out exactly how widespread that is. I believe there are records from each tax year that would show how many are filed versus withdrawn. I can tell you from the testimony I've heard from assessors across the state that there are a handful of practitioners who are utilizing this practice, and they are growing in the across the state where it's occurring.
Why would the remedy for that not be to take them one case at a time?
The administrative law judge will set a docket with however many cases, and the assessor plans to be there to answer 100 individual cases. So they're simply doing the work individually of 100 cases when in fact there's only 10. So
they have to prepare for claims that are ultimately withdrawn.
That's exactly the problem. That's what we just want to know which ones are real and which ones are just the leverage used to make it easier and I guess or add more pressure on the assessor for the other 10. That's what we're trying to get at.
Thank you, sir.
Other questions? All right, thank you. Stay tuned, Mr. Donami. All right, Ms. McKinnon.
Obviously, I'm going to need to address a few of Mr. Denami's points after I deal with our initial thoughts on the matter. The first thing is that I'm not going to get into a lot of the specifics about the information being requested. There were a lot of comments filed. Those sufficiently address our concerns. I'm sure there are a number of people that are going to address the nuances and specifics of the rule. My concern and our firm's concern is a broader concern. It's that the state board has a statutory duty to receive, hear, consider, and act on complaints and appeals to the board, not act based on information that's submitted with an appeal form. So the key word here is hear. What this rule does is it creates a discriminatory and an unduly burdensome impediment to commercial taxpayers having their cases heard. And it is our opinion, it is my opinion, that this falls outside of the statutory duties and authority of the state board. The state board has an obligation to hear taxpayer complaints. It's discriminatory in an obvious sense. It only applies to commercial taxpayers. So if a commercial taxpayer is relying on a sales comparison approach because they know the guy next door just sold for $50 a square foot, the residential taxpayer that owns the $1 million home doesn't have to send any sales. They don't have to provide any adjustments. So why are we singling out the commercial taxpayers? They pay a higher assessment ratio, and now we're going to burden them further. As far as being unduly, unnecessarily burdensome, there are a few points that I wanted to address on that. Now, I could go on all day about this, and I will do my very best to try to hit just a few key points. But the first thing is that the rule requires the specific evidence being provided at the time the appeal is filed or face dismissal. The first issue is that we're dealing with extremely tight time frames. Outside of Shelby County and all other counties, we're dealing with May 20th values coming out, county boards happening in June, few down in July, and the state board appeals must be filed by August 1st. So we're dealing with real tight time frames, and then we're supposed to turn around and provide all this specific information. But the thing is that the specific information being requested, a taxpayer should be able to present and support their case with any evidence they see fit. It doesn't matter if maybe the administrative judge may rule against them. You never know what's going to necessarily carry the day in a hearing before an administrative judge. But what we do know is that a taxpayer has a right to be heard, and it shouldn't be cut off in advance of hearing, because there wasn't specific evidence provided. This specific evidence, maybe that's not what they're going to rely on. But now we're going to leave it to the discretion of, on a case-by-case basis, now deciding whether the taxpayer has a right to go forward with their appeal. That, I think, is in violation of 67.5-1501B2, where it lays out the duties and obligations of the State Board of Equalization. The State Board does have a right to request information. That's one of the stated basis of authority for this proposed rule. But they don't need it at the time of filing. When the State Board needs this information is when their hearing examiner, the administrative judges, will be hearing the case. The only need is for the assessors. That's the basis. That's what Mr. Jones said. That's what Mr. Denami alluded to. The assessors need this information. They have a basis. They have a way to get this information. First of all, a lot of it's been presented at the County Board of Equalization, at least the taxpayer's basis. Well, those appeal packets that are submitted and given to the assessor at that time, very often they're not maintained. We're having to resubmit that information later in the discovery process. But then we hear complaints about, well, we don't know what your basis of appeal is. Well, go look at the county board packet we sent you. The other issue is that there's a very informal discovery process that assessors routinely, they can and do avail themselves of. So if the assessors want information, all they have to do is ask for it when they get the appeal form. But why do we need to create a rule that is going to result in a potential dismissal. The other thing that we have to consider is the additional motions litigation that is going to result, because it will result. This is supposed to be an informal process. It will not remain an informal process, because the evidence that's going to be submitted with the appeal form will be analyzed and scrutinized, and it'll be used as a sword to have appeals dismissed prior to hearing.
All right, thank you. Mr. Carruthers?
This may be the first time I've ever agreed with Evans and Petrie on something. You already have this rule. Under your uniform rules of procedure for hearing contested cases before the state administrative agencies for discovery, it says parties are encouraged, where practical, to attempt to achieve any necessary discovery informally in order to avoid undue expense and delay in the resolution of the matter at hand when such attempts have failed or where complexity of the case is such that the informal discovery is not practical. So this is duplicative to me, and it's also discriminative. I'm a commercial taxpayer. I have property that's worth over $250,000. Why not apply this to the residential taxpayers? Why not apply it to everybody? Why just us? I think I know the reason why. Residential taxpayers are the voters, and this is coming from the assessor's office. Also, this committee, rulemaking committee that Kelsey had on January the 5th, the day after holidays, it was held at 10 a.m., how many people were there? How many?
I'll wait till my turn.
Okay. All right. I don't think there's very many taxpayers there to voice their concern. If you're just hell-bent on passing this rule, I would ask you to remand it back to that committee so more input could be included. Thank you.
While he's coming forward, the answer to that question was about 10 or 12, but notice was duly given to the agent community and to the through the administrative register at least 75 days in advance as required by law. So we think we gave adequate notice.
I'm going to touch back on a couple of things that Mr. Dinami said with regard to put forth the evidence. A lot of it has to do with, they only put forth the property record card, and there's no basis in that property record card how they did the other income approach or market approach. You just saw that one thing, basically a cost approach. There's no backgrounds for it. There are certain jurisdictions, what he's talking about filing the appeals, there are certain jurisdictions that some are open to taxpayer agents, some, in other words, you can actually sit down and talk to them and negotiate across the table from them and everything, and there's some good ones and there's some bad ones. So in this appeal process, lots of times you'll get down, if there's no, discussion back and forth, then you get time, they'll have to prepare the appeal, which I think is wrong. And then at the last minute, you do get their work up. And usually in the past, it's been through your administrative law judges saying, okay, or assessment appeals company 10 days prior, you finally get the county's thing and say, hey, they're right. You're right. I'm going to withdraw the appeal. So they have had to work it up. And same thing along that line. The main thing I've got a problem with, and I guess, a lot of it comes from my background working in the assessor's office a long time, is that it's like Andrea said, this is totally unfair to us. We're going to file this information. They're going to have our hand until the administrative law judges basically docket the thing. Now, in the past, they'll docket them. We'll file the appeal, say in August, September. They'll docket the appeal. We'll get a case management order. And in that case management order, they're spelled out what you will do and will do, and the other side, you'll get their hands, you'll pre-file these exhibits. Well, I brought one. This is one. Mainly the one I'm talking about might be like Judge Mincy. Well, here's one, and this is from another administrative law judge. There's no timetable in this whatsoever. In other words, it says, and I got a copy if you want to look at it. This happens to be one in Williamson County. So what I'm saying, in this particular case, you receive this. If this rule passes, I would be going into that hearing and I wouldn't have one piece of information from the county. Whereas they would have had my stuff for at least 5 months prior to pick it apart. And I go in there and I'm just going to be blindsided. Now, you say, well, what's the deal with that? Well, I can tell you what's going to happen. When you go back to your taxpayers and tell them what happened, they're going to say, Jay, appeal it on to the commission. So it's going to backlog the commission because they didn't get a fair shake on it. And so basically that's all I've got to say along that line. It's just not fair to us. I mean, you know, if I take it a step further, you've got Assessment Appeals Commission decisions handed down, and I think this is part of my packet, that the property record card is nothing more than a mass appraisal. So why wouldn't they be held to the same standard of accountability that we are? If you've got a commission issuing this decision down, it says there's nothing more. Now, granted, there's more to the property record card, but there again, you know, is this a public record? Can we get the income approach, the market approach? I don't know. It depends on jurisdictions. So, you know, get this information. You know, you may or may not get it. So I think the commission was correct. It's just nothing, you know, why wouldn't it be a same level playing field? In other words, they're giving everything the property record card, which they based it on. It's been, you know, according to the commission's ruling, it's just nothing more than a mass reappraisal. That's all I've got.
Questions, Mr. Catnany? Thank you, sir. Ms. Gravely?
I hate to be repetitive, but this is something that you must consider. Under the law, under the current law, the commercial and residential are treated equally. If this rule is adopted, there's no equity there. You've heard it explained. There's all additional hoops that the commercial properties and utility properties will have to jump through to comply with this rule. Mr. Denami made a broad brush statement that I take great offense to for our industry. He's talking about where, hey, Mr. Assessor, you know, we filed 100 appeals. If you reduce one, we'll withdraw 90. If that's the case, then cross-file for those individuals. Don't paint a broad brush for our industry. I take offense to it. I'm sure other representatives do also. Another point, too, that you have this, as mentioned before, this creates deadlines unduly. It's going to cause backlogs at the AJL level. And as Mr. Canton just mentioned, when we feel we haven't gotten a fair shake or fair value because we've got blindsided at the hearing because we were unable to find out what the opposing side felt about the value, then it's going them to the Assessment Appeals Commission. And then when you have an Assessment Appeals Commission who only currently meet twice a year, how is that going to be resolved? I mean, I've got appeals pending right now, an appeal that's 4 years backlog because they only meet twice a year, and you can't get all your witnesses to get timely into that small window. Another issue is as you go through this appeal process, when you're dealing with major properties, multi-million-dollar properties, both parties may find at a later date that they need an MAI appraisal done on this property. Well, where's the avenue for that? It's already past deadlines to file information. And an MAI appraisal may take months, if not a year, to get accomplished. So how does that fall into this category? I think, in a nutshell, we got the cart in front of the horse. That's basically my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gravely. Any questions? Mr. Tarwater?
Mr. Gravely,
come back, please.
Come back up here. I got a question for you. As I understand the way the rule's written, it requires more specific information than just the statement of rationale for commercial properties with a value of over $250,000. Is that the way you read it?
Correct.
Okay. Would you be happy or satisfied with a rule that would require you to just supply a statement of rationale for those commercial properties so that everybody was treated the same?
Well, a statement of rationale, to me, which is on my forms on income producing property, is simply the income supported by this property does not represent the current value by the county, does not support the current value established by the county. That's on my appeal forms. You know, a one word, you know, may not be sufficient, but that's, you know, I don't know of any more definition of why you're appealing a property that you can say other than, you know, giving detailed data.
Well, it requires you to give a bona fide estimate of the market value.
Correct.
The new rule, right? And that would apply to residential properties and to commercial properties.
It does not apply to residential in this case.
Is that right, Mr. Jones?
Point of clarification.
Yes.
Every appeal must be accompanied by a good faith contention of value. That's long been the rule. The only thing added here is the language beginning with a statement of rationale in support of the estimated value. All the language after that is new. I should have given you an underlined version. So a statement of rationale, and then the sentence that begins, if the bona fide estimate exceeds $250,000 pertains to commercial public utility, the statement must include one of the identified approaches to value and the components as follows, and those are listed there. That is the new part of that rule. You already have to put your contention of value on the appeal form.
But with no statement of rationale.
Correct. You have to.
All right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But is what I stated a fair assessment of what should be on that form?
Well, I think what the rationale would look like would be something along the lines of net operating income for a property of this category, which it might be an office building, and you'd make a statement of what you thought a stabilized net operating income was. Okay? And you might provide some information about what you believe a market capitalization rate for that property would be.
Yeah, but
now,
we
you don't have to.
We don't appraise based on the operating income. We appraise it on a pro forma.
That's what I mean when I say stabilized. You wouldn't necessarily use. You could report the actual income and state that it was not sufficient, but you'd also be expected at the hearing, of course, to talk about what the market income or rent rates for that kind of property was. So something like an estimate of net operating income supported by your knowledge of the market.
Well, that would be the something that's probably already given to the County Board of Equalization.
Could very well have been, in which case, you know, it shouldn't be very hard to.
Well, in every jurisdiction I've ever appealed, I've been doing this since 1976. When a county asked me, can you supply me with the P&L data or whatever, I said, well, I gave it to the county board. Well, I don't have access to it.
Yeah, I think if the test in these cases is the assessor says that there was no compliance, and then the agent says, yes, I did comply. In fact, I gave that information at the county board. Then it would be up to the judge to decide. And I think the judges have been pretty even-handed. We've got some pretty experienced judges now. So
well,
that's the hope, at least, as to how these issues would be worked out.
Even with this back and forth right here, I'm still not sure what you need in that sentence. I mean, granted, what I just said is somewhat general, but the value posted is detailed. And just to say that, well, our stabilized NOI is $100,000, that doesn't tell the assessor enough information where he can decide what he's got to do. He's still going to need eventually that data, which we already say we always get together informally and hash that process out. But passing this rule is going to make it so formal that no one's going to answer a question in anyone until the judge tells them to.
Treasurer Lillard.
We have another speaker after this gentleman.
We got a couple more.
I just
Oh, I
wanted
was
to,
answering the question.
I wasn't trying to cut you short, sir, and I want to listen to the other two speakers, but I just wanted to suggest to everybody here today, this thing needs some more work, in my view. I think there needs to be a deferral period here, and I'll make an appropriate motion at the end of the other two speakers who are going to speak here, and I think there needs to be a meeting. I mean, this is not a judge and this is not courts. I can't require the parties to come in and meet and all that, but I think we can say to our staff, Kelsey, to set up a meeting or something like that where most of the representatives can come and talk about it some more and try to work through some of these issues and everything, because there are some issues.
Let me just say that I talk for a living. That's and Mr. Talkwater calling me back up here, so I'm sorry.
I plead guilty, sir. I was just trying to understand the statement of rationale.
I just want to make that statement at this particular point.
I think that's appropriate, Treasurer. In fact, I know it is. Mr. Randy Button.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, members of the board, for allowing me time. And maybe this discussion would carry on if Mr. Lillard's recommendation maybe goes forward. But as a former assessor and also as a property owner and as a as a registered property tax appeal agent, I found some concern in one thing I would like, and I've had this discussion with Mr. Jones and also with Mr. Denami, and they've given me some assurance as to how this relates to the specifics. But in line 3 in item 1, it starts out, if the valuation of the subject property is at issue, then the appeal form must provide a bona fide estimate of market value. Well, and then it states the 3 approaches to value. Well, in many cases, as an assessor as well as an agent, I've seen situations where it's not just related, it's related to value, but just not these 3 approaches. It could be related directly to the highest and best use of the property, which is the foundation for establishing the value. So before you could ever, if the assessor has a contention of what one highest and best use is, and the property taxpayer has another determination of highest and best use, before you even get into applying approaches to value or estimating value, you have to have that determination. Someone has to make that determination, whether it is the administrative judge, or the Assessment Appeals Commission, whomever, someone has to make that decision before any applicable approaches to value, the 3 approaches to value, or any other approaches that you would look at of valuing the property. So I would like for the board to at least take that in consideration, in that this verbiage may pigeonhole someone to have to do something that they don't know what applicable approaches are going to be or which direction to even go. And what I mean by highest and best use, the appraiser may say this land is worth the value based upon a residential subdivision. I may say it's based on farmland. Before we can even establish what the value is or start going down that path, we have to have a determination of what the highest and best use of that property is. It's not only highest and best use, but there are other issues that are outside this parameter of value of the 3 approaches to value. It could be a classification of the property, whether it's in floodplain or something else. Mr. Jones has assured me that there are some opportunities there to allow for those kind of appeals. But I think the real problem here is the way this is worded, starting in line 3. I'd be glad to answer any questions of the board.
Any questions, Mr. Button? Thank you, sir. Treasurer, I was wrong. There are 2 people left now. Okay. Mr. Nelson, Steve Nelson.
I'm Steve Nelson, Criterion Property Resources. I don't have anything further to add. I don't want to be redundant. However, I'd like to recognize Mr. Lillard's suggestion that further discussion on all of these matters be considered. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Robert Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be very brief. And I will recognize Mr. Burton as being a appraiser, of course. And he does bring up a good point on the highest and best use. I believe Mr. Burton also obtained his MAI, so recognize that. You do have to look at the MAI. My name's Robert Lee, excuse me. Some people do not know me. I've practiced in this area for over 30 years with the state and now on private practice. I do represent some counties, some assessors on appeals. Basically, these rules are needed, in my experience, to delve into and to flesh out the basis for these appeals. You see the one before you that just says income. That is very hard for the assessing areas to look at that to determine, well, what is the NOI, what is the cap rate, what is the appropriate expenses. If you have that information, that gives you more information to go on and you can look at it. If it just says sales, well, what sales are you talking about? You see these, if you look at residential appeal forms, you will see that those people write paragraphs about sales in my neighborhood, about everything else. Those people really flesh that area out. It's the commercial people and a lot of the practitioners that just use one or two words. And they've got routines into this. And that is where you see the assessors getting frustrated. The assessors do a mass appraisal on the front end. They are not doing a single property appraisal. They're doing a mass appraisal. So they do just have a property record card. They submit that as their valuation. The taxpayer has the burden of proof. There was questions about the withdrawals. There's a statute that provides that a taxpayer has an absolute right to withdraw an appeal at any time before the hearing. So therefore, when you do get a bundle of appeals, there's more than likely, as Mr. Jones has said, several of those are going to be withdrawn, settled, or go away. What the assessors groups that I've worked with are concerned about is notice on the front end. The case management orders used by the administrative judges, this was an attempt to try to get flow of information. This more or less takes place of that case management order on the front end to get flow of information between the taxpayer's agent, and the assessing area. To try to get that information on the front end, the assessors groups may look at this and say, I can live with that NOI, I can live with that cap rate, I want to tweak those expenses a little bit, starts a dialogue. So that's the attempt. Do not understand the comment about this will be a sword and that they're going to have our information longer. The information will be flowing from both sides. The taxpayers have the right to request this discovery just like the other. This just was an attempt to speed the process along and get that information flowing on the front end. That's the only thing I wanted to comment. Thank you.
Any questions, comments, Mr. Lee? All right. Now, Mr. Nami, I told you earlier I would give you the opportunity to come back and say a few words or answer any questions from the group. I do know that I am not going to entertain a motion that would result in approval of the rule today. We have heard from the treasurer that there will be a motion to ensure some further discussions. Would you like to come back up?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and we are happy to continue this discussion and look forward to the opportunity to do so. In addition, we would like at the through this discussion process, there are two more items that we would like to have the board consider, and that's Rule 600-0108 and there's two of them dealing with 0108 too. If we could include those in that discussion, we'd like to continue forward. In closing, this is not intended to harm taxpayers. It's intended to filter out which are real bona fide appeals and which are simply filed without the intention of moving forward. Thank you.
Comptroller?
Hopefully come to some resolution and not necessarily have a contested matter before this on the rule before us when you come back. But if that does happen, it would be good if you made some pretty strong statements in your initial comments. If you have some flesh that out and be able to demonstrate that that's true.
Okay.
Because that's concerning.
Commissioner Roberts.
Mr. Comptroller, I may be saying what you're saying, but we've had a lot of discussion about information and procedure. But one of the comments that was made very early on was the abusive nature of this process, and I wonder if you could look back for, say, 2 or 3 years and get us some statistical information. How many have been filed? How many dismissed?
Would it be all right if I request that from the State Board of Equalization? I think we will have the list of everyone.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Use your microphone if you would, Ms. Comptroller.
That is part of it, and that is statistical, and that is verifiable. But there's also the question of the negotiations where there have been what could be viewed as abusive practices. And whatever we have to that would be interesting to hear.
All right. Ms. Treasurer.
Mr. Chairman, I move to defer consideration of this rule amendment that's now before the Board of Equalization until our next meeting, and request that the staff, through some device, whether it's a meeting or otherwise, consult with the people who appeared here today to try to narrow the differences about these issues that have been presented.
It's a proper motion. It's properly seconded. Any further discussion? I would just say that Mr. Denami threw out a couple of other rules he wanted to have discussions about. Those were not part of the proposed rules. They were not part of today's meeting. If y'all choose to discuss those, that is up to y'all. But that was not part of what was put on notice today. I just want to make real clear.
Okay. They were part of the comments that TAAO filed in the record and were outside the notice scope, so is the reason why we haven't offered them before you all today.
Okay.
I think Mr. Denami is requesting that they be part of the dialogue at such time as the parties get together.
I certainly see no harm in that. Okay. All right, so we have proper motion, properly seconded. Further discussion? Since we are not approving the rule, I assume we do not have to take a roll call vote. Any objection to the motion? Hearing none, so ordered. Any further business before us today?
I believe that completes all the work.
All
Ms.
right.
Bennett, do you know of anything else that's our agenda? And thank you very much for
We
your
have a
time
motion to
today.
adjourn, properly moved, properly seconded. Item is non-debatable. We stand adjourned. Thank you very much.